I already forgot it. That's just how I roll here. We're live now. Hello, world. Okay. Last night we watched Funny Girl. I haven't seen that movie in a long time.
The Barbra Streisand Funny Girl?
Barbra Streisand Funny Girl. It's a great movie. I mean, really good movie. I was surprised. Omar Sharif, forget about it.
Omar Sharif.
And James Caan, right?
Yeah.
Omar Sharif is in one of my all-time favorite movies, Dr. Zhivago.
There you go. That's perfect.
For people over 50, it's the question of, which one of his wife or his lover did you like best? So
Julie Christie.
Yeah, most people go with that for sure.
I'd go there too.
Yes. I saw the Denzel Washington movie, The Equalizer, over the weekend.
Oh, there you go.
Which was a sort of reimagining of the old '80s TV series, which I was a big fan of. The only connection between the movie and the TV series is that the character had the same name, and they both used to be in the CIA. Other than that, they're completely different. But it was actually a really good movie, a good action movie.
Oh, man, yeah.
Popcorn flick, as I like to call them.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the thing about Funny Girl that really struck me, first of all, it was made in 1968, which is the year of my birth. And I was sitting there, and I'm wondering, and there's a lot of, risque things for 1968. And I guess, then I remember that it started getting towards the Summer of Love. So things had to be changing a little bit in the country, because there's some definite, the one scene, Funny Girl, where she sings this whole thing about, a wife or whatever, and comes out as this pregnant wife, and this whole funny scene or whatever. Some of the costumes that are being worn by the women are fascinating, and they're beyond that. They're just, not all the women were were really fit to wear these costumes. So it's something that you saw very differently than TV from now. Where you would see people, and I thought that was kind of cool in a way to see that, which was kind of, and so. Yes.
Well, I'm pretty sure that Barbra Streisand won the Oscar for Best Actress.
Oh yeah, and that launched her career.
Along with it was a tie. It was her and it was Katharine Hepburn for The Lion in Winter, which is one of the best movies I've ever seen. Had Peter O'Toole in it and Anthony Hopkins as a young guy. It was a fantastic movie.
Yeah, not every day can you hear a Funny Girl when you tune in to watch a hockey podcast. So I just want to throw that out there. That we bring you things that no one else can bring. Hi, Josh.
How's it going?
Good. You ready to get going? We're going to start the show.
Yep.
Cool. All right, so I'll say the date, and then we'll go Mike,
No, I'm not going
Kevin, Josh. I like that. That's all right. Mike, Kevin, Josh, in that order, right? All right, here goes. It's the 7th of October. It's Monday.
No.
It's the 6th of October. It's Monday. Here we go. Hello, Hockey World. It is Monday, October 6th, 2014.
I am Michael Agello.
I'm Kevin Allen of USA Today.
I'm Josh Rimmer.
And I'm Eklund, and that's pretty scary, Josh. And we're watching the HockeyBuzzCast, or should I say the Columbus Blue Jackets Buzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. Because real quick, we do have to announce that the Blue Jackets have signed Ryan Johansson. The anger has subsided. They are now having their makeup fun, and they're actually in the midst of this whole thing's better, and you can go back to putting the Blue Jackets in proper perspective. So Josh, the deal's done. I mean, that's got to be pretty exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. I think all the Jackets fans and everybody was getting worried that this deal wasn't going to get done. Obviously, it did, and it's good news for all Jackets fans. Now, Johansson is in Vancouver. And he still might not be in the lineup their first game, which is going to be Thursday night at Buffalo.
Seriously?
They have that whole immigration stuff going on. So,
Lord, really?
Yes. So
that's
between
horrible.
immigration and also Coach Richards saying today no indication when he would arrive, when he does, and take it from there. So it's very possible he still might miss the game opener in Buffalo on Thursday night.
Right. And Mike, you guessed what, $4 million per?
Yeah, I said that the Jackets would consider it a victory if they signed him for 3.9 because the salary wouldn't have a 4 at the beginning. To me, I think Overhart won this going away. Not only does he get $4 million for his client, the last year the deal is $6 million. So when he goes to arbitration, they have to, or they qualify him, it's going to be 10% more than $6 million. So I think he hit a home run, and I think the Jackets, because of Jenner's injury and because of Horton's back injury, that they needed to get it done, and they had to pay a little more to get it done.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm going to respectfully disagree a little bit. I think this was a good compromise for sure, but they get the extra year. So 3 years of Johansson at a $4 million cap hit. In 3 years, he should be a premium player if you believe in his progression. So
Right.
I like this from the Blue Jackets' perspective. I mean, they didn't want to have the $6 million jumping off point, but that jumping off point is in 3 years, not 2 years. So, well, not a major win, but it is a little bit of a plus for them to have that third year and to have the $4 million overall in 3 years.
I agree. I think it's a win-win. I think the 3-year deal is the sort of the compromise in the whole thing, right? That's the compromise. That's where they came up with it. And yeah, because if that last year, which is probably higher, if it's $5 or $6 million or whatever, you're right, Kevin. That's going into his final year, so he still has 1 more year of free agency, 1 more year before free agency. So that also helps the Blue Jackets. They get a chance to negotiate with Oberhart twice more over the next 5 years, if you consider them going to stay as a Blue Jacket. So they get to enjoy this experience 2 more times. But we'll see how that plays out for sure. But it's done. It is done. So we're going to jump right into the Metro Division, where we will also talk about some trades that happened over the weekend as we go. But I think that they made nice trades over the weekend to set up our show nicely. Let's start with the Carolina Hurricanes, who have added. The Carolina Hurricanes last year finished 7th in the Metro Division. They missed the playoffs. They were 1 game over 500 last year. They've added Brad Malone. They didn't have a parade for those additions, but they did add those guys. They also are losing Radek Dvorak, who's played since the 70s, Manny Malhotra, who's played since about the 70s too, and Andrei Laktionov. Josh, are you cutting in for something?
No, I just want to tell you, but they sustained a big loss. Still waiting to hear, and that's Jeff Skinner, who suffered yet another concussion on the weekend in a preseason game.
Holy cow! Well, this team has been best summarized by. Can we start again, please, this year? Because they have really had some serious hits.
But Skinner, I think, has had 4 concussions, at least 4 concussions, at least that I could think of. I mean, is that right? Am I wrong in saying that? Because it seems like he's had 1 or 2 every year the last couple of years.
It's about right, I think. Right. So now they've lost. Skinner could be temporarily out for at least. They've lost Jordan Stahl for 4 months.
Yeah.
I guess that's the big question. Can they get past that Jordan Stahl and perhaps Skinner loss as well? Mm-hmm. They are, they're being run. This is the first year that Ron Francis is running this team. And that's a big change.
And Peters.
And Peters, right? So, Kevin, what do you think? I mean, this team's definitely.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly a candidate for the Connor McDavid, Jack Eichel sweepstakes. I think we all identified early on. They didn't do much in the offseason. They weren't aggressive, and I think it reflects maybe Ronnie Francis just wants to get a chance to review that from the captain here. I'm sure he's. But to me, it starts with the goaltending. Cam Ward has not been the goalie that they're paying him to be, Khudobin is a better option in my opinion, but they weren't able to trade Cam Ward. So Ward's in a position of having to prove himself again, and maybe put the Carolina Hurricanes in a position to perhaps find a new home for him. But they really needed, if you discounted all the injuries, they needed basically the 2 Stahl brothers, particularly Eric, to step up and have the kind of year that we saw from him earlier in his career, and not the kind of year he had last season. And Semin had an off year last season. It seemed like almost all of their top players had an off season. And now we have Jordan Stahl hurt, we have Skinner hurt. I think their defense is okay, but it's not exceptional. I do think Justin Falk, could take a step in his development, move to a higher level. I expect that he's going to, at some point in his career, be one of the better defensemen in the league. But I think this team is really going to be near the bottom and not the top of the Metropolitan Division.
Yeah, especially with what happened with the Islanders. I think this team is definitely now looking towards the bottom of the division this past weekend. Mike, your thoughts?
Yeah, you know a team is in trouble when 30% of their roster is Toronto Maple Leaf castoffs. I mean, it's
They're
going to be tough.
rebuilding that great defense from the early
Yeah,
tournament.
Tim Gleason, John Michael Lyles. You got former, Jay McClement, Yuri Toulouse, Jay Harrison. I mean, there's so many ex-Leafs on this team. It's like this is the Toronto Marlies and not the Carolina Hurricanes. Let me just say, I think what the direction of this team is not to say tank, but I mean they didn't really make any kind of moves over the summer. There was an upheaval in their management and their coaching staff. They have some young prospects. I think they're going to give them a lot of playing time. I think Khudobin is the number one goaltender. At least talent-wise, I think he got more, and he played better last year than Cam Ward did. And Cam Ward has had a series of injury problems. As Josh said, Skinner is out. We don't know what's going to go on with that. We know Stahl's going to be out for 3 to 4 months. Jordan Stahl. Eric Stahl's making $8.25 million in the next, I believe, 2 years. If they truly are going to go for a Connor McDavid or a Jack Eichel, I wouldn't be surprised if they try to maybe move Eric Stahl. It would be a tough nut to crack in terms of finding a team that has that amount of cap room. But I just see them as a complete rebuild, and it's going to take them a few years to get there.
That's interesting. Wow. Huh.
A rebuild in Carolina is a tough issue.
Yeah.
I mean, they really cemented, their place in the community by winning the Stanley Cup. But it's been a while now, and I'd be fearful that the season ticket base would fall off pretty dramatically. So, I'm sure that's what they're debating as well. I'm sure they're thinking about trying to rebuild on the fly, which is always a difficult task.
Now, did you guys see the? I'll say guys 4 times. Did you guys see Niskanen the high hit on Skinner? I mean, obviously we're talking about Skinner being out for quite some time, it looks like. But did you guys actually see the hit? Because some people thought it was pretty dirty.
I didn't see it. We'll have to look for it.
Nor have I seen it either.
I'll look for it for sure. Let's see if we can find it. Get a link to it. Check it out, Josh. We'll throw it in there. So let's move from Carolina to Columbus alphabetically. The Columbus Blue Jackets, who now are in the news today, obviously. They have added Ryan Johansson, you could say, kind of. Their additions, but the key additions this summer were Scott Hartnell and Brian Gibbons. Hartnell being the key addition. They lost R.J. Umberger, who was a big part of their core and been there for a long time. They lost Nikita Nikitin, which is a really good art movie, I think. And they lost Blake Como, left wing, and they lost Derek McKenzie, center. So they lost 4 players, but they have a lot of great young players. It's the youngest team in the NHL, youth-wise, and they've looked really good in the preseason. I think they're undefeated in the preseason, if last I checked.
They also picked up Skille on Sunday on the waiver wire.
Jack Skille, yeah.
Jack Skille, which is a sneaky little pickup because Skille can play, I think, but he has definitely struggled to make a part of Chicago. That's where they got him off of, right?
No, they got him off the Islanders.
Oh, right. I was thinking he was a Blackhawk for a while there, right?
He was a long time.
Yeah. So that's this is a team that really we talked about before has jumped into the eye of the public last year, and really sort of for the first time mattered to a lot of people because they had a really a fun, dramatic playoff against the Pittsburgh Penguins, and everybody likes to root against the Pittsburgh Penguins. So it was a fun series. This is a team that has historically gotten off to terrible starts, and one of the big issues with Ryan Johansson was the start. They've lost Horton for a while, but that's nothing new. They played with a lot of last year without Horton and did okay. So this is I guess. And it's funny because you've seen people pick the Blue Jackets to win this division. You've seen some people say they're going to take a big step backwards. I think maybe the hardest team to sort of predict, Mike, overall.
Yeah, I mean the injury situation and the holdout situation, and when you have a player who comes in after a long holdout, it does take him time to sort of get back into the swing of things. So it's going to be interesting to see, how Johansson comes in, 1 or 2 games into the season and plays right away. He could struggle early. I know that Horton is out, as you said. Saw a report this morning that there was an injury with Brandon Dubinsky. I don't know how serious that is, but if it is serious, on top of Jenner, you're talking their top 4 forwards are either held out or are injured. I mean, that's a lot of weight for Sergei Bobrovsky and guys like Artem Anisimov and Nick Foligno to carry the team while these guys are getting back from the injured list. I mean, I like the direction that this organization is going. They have solid goaltending. I like their defense. I'm a big fan of Ryan Murray. I think he's a really fine young defenseman. Wisniewski and Jack Johnson are really good offensive guys. It's all a question of scoring and scoring depth. If Horton comes back and Scott Hartnell can score 20 goals, and they get contributions from Dubinsky and Johansson, I don't see why they're not a playoff team, but they're not getting off to a good start with all these injuries and all these concerns.
Yeah, no, I agree. We'll go back to we have the Skinner hit. We'll go back to that in a little bit. But so Kevin, I know you think you've been more bullish on this team, correct?
Yeah, I am very much. I like this team. I mean, I thought they really learned a lot in that playoff series against Pittsburgh. Like, they lost the series, but they were the better team.
Yeah.
I think Bobrovsky, he had a little bit of a yip in that series. Like, he wasn't as strong, and I think he felt the pressure. But right after that, I think this is important, he went to the World Championships and he helped Russia win a gold medal. He just played phenomenally at that tournament, and I think that really bolstered his confidence and just sort of reminded him that, hey, I can play in pressure-filled situations. And the Hartnell acquisition, I think, will help them on and off the ice. They're still trying to sell tickets there, and I think Hartnell's a good player to have when you're trying to sell tickets. He can be fun with the media, but more importantly, his style of play. He's a memorable player when he's on the ice, and I also think he'll help them in the postseason. He plays that playoff style all the time in the regular season, in addition to the playoffs. And getting Johansson signed, and we just talked about that. I think the price, at least in terms of the average salary, the cap hit, it will work out for the Blue Jackets in the long run. And what's often forgotten about the Columbus Blue Jackets, they're a very physical team. Like, they were second in the NHL last season in hits. And I think their defense is underrated. I know Jack Johnson doesn't have a great analytics picture, but I think the team feeds off his competitiveness. He's a real passionate player, and I like their defense. I think it's just one of those defenses that they don't get a lot of attention, but I think they serve Bobrovsky pretty well. So they'll be in the hunt. I don't see them winning the division, but I think the division is wide open enough that they can entertain the possibility. Like, I think this is the only division where you can't really identify a favorite. I don't have any idea who's going to win this division.
Yeah, I mean, which way this could go any way. To me, it comes down to Bobrovsky in a lot of ways. If they're going to win the division, if Bobrovsky has a great year, then they can win the division. And Bobrovsky has a good year, they're in the playoffs. But whether or not he has a great year or not is still the question to be remained. That's what I want to see, and I want to see this team. I want to see how they react to last year's momentum, and if they can take it. They seem to be in the preseason at least. Preseason is preseason, but they won all their games. That's significant when you win all your games or lose games in preseason. It doesn't necessarily mean anything, but it just shows there's a winning culture going on there. Josh, right now, do you agree with that?
Absolutely. I mean, I don't know how many times I got to say how exciting it was, being there for the playoff game last year. And you know what? These guys came hard to camp this year, ready to work, ready to storm out of the gate. The problem has been a bit of a slow start. Bobrovsky, a little bit of a slow start. But these guys want to jump right out of the gate and play the way they were playing last year. These guys are loose. These guys are excited. These guys trained hard in the off season. I expect a lot more out of the Jackets this year than even expect more this year than last year.
The problem is
a really good team and a tough team to play.
The problem is that when the expectations are out there, like they are for the Jackets after making the playoffs, sometimes you do get that step back a little bit, and that's what I'm saying. All these concerns right now are I think would be consistent with them taking at least a brief step back. I think that they have a lot of talent.
Yeah.
I think that defensively they're very sound. As a forechecking, penalty killing, goaltending, their blue line. It's scoring, which I think is going to be the concern. And if, like I said, if Johansson can score, if they get offensive contributions from Dubinsky and Hartnell, then I think that they will make the playoffs. But we'll see.
It's very important to Johansson he comes in and scores goals right away after what just happened. I mean, it's very
There's
important.
a lot of pressure on him, guys.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of pressure on him, and he comes in, and the fans are going to be warm to him as they always are. But if he goes 10 games and has 3 goals, that's going to be a problem. But if he comes in and puts in like a goal or 2 in his first game, it's all going to be this whole lockout. I mean, not lockout, holdout / whatever you want to call it. It's not going to be a problem anymore, right? But that's the issue. He's got to come out big. He's got to come out strong, and I think he's got to play in the first game. They got to find a way to make it happen because that's really disappointing if he can't play in that game. Moving on to the New Jersey Devils. Last year, 6th in the division, and to the island of misfit toys comes Mike Camilleri and Martin Havlat, and gone is Marty Brodeur, of course, Mark Fane, Anton Volchenkov. Going with very young defense, this team is. This team has decided to go very young on defense, and yet kind of very old on offense. There's definitely a culture difference between the offense and the defense. And in goal, they're going with Corey Schneider, who has shown he can do it, I think. I think he's proved he can be a #1 goalie. Mm-hmm. But this team, whenever I pick them to do well, they do terribly. Whenever I pick them to do terribly, they do well. So I can tell you right now, I'm picking them not to do well. So look for them to do extremely well. So if there's a team to watch out for, Kevin, it's the Devils for me because I don't see this team. I don't see them having anything at all. And last time I said that, they went to a Stanley Cup final. So I am really kind of stuck. What are your thoughts on the Devils?
Well, that reminds me of like the 1990s, what I used to say about the Devils. If they make the playoffs, they can win this NHL championship. Like they were a bizarre team. Like you weren't quite sure how they were going to be in the regular season. Not so dissimilar from the way the Kings have been in terms of just eking into the playoffs when they won the Cup the first time. But it is a unique team because of how old they are up front, and now they're going to go with younger as perhaps one of the keys for this team. They need him to step up. I believe in Schneider as well, and I think this is interesting. This is the first time that he'll actually not have a high-profile goalie looking over his shoulders. I mean, he had Luongo in Vancouver even when he had the job, and last season even when he was held the net, Marty Brodeur was still there, a very popular player, obviously, in New Jersey, a guy with multiple cups and, the winningest goalie of all time. So this will be the first time where he is, running the show all by himself. So that'll be a bit of change for him, but I think he's up for that. I'm really curious to see how Jaromir Jagr will be, whether he still has it. It's amazing how well he played last season. I think it's really a testimony to the passion and work ethic that he's had, that he's able to play at such a high level. Because, it's interesting. He's obviously not as quick as he once was, but, he's still got the same sort of moves. He can still protect the puck well. He's still shifty. He just plays sort of a half-court game. Like, we used to remember Jaromir Jagr on the rush, that big-bodied forward coming down. And now I think of him, and I think of him, setting up, coming off the boards as well. But, will they score enough goals? I don't have an answer for that. But they always seem to find a way to stay competitive. But this season, I don't see it happening. I think near the bottom of the standings.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. Jagr, especially on Jagr's point. I mean, the thing is, he still will. If he still has a wrist shot in between the circles, it's probably going in the net. He's still going to find those holes. He has amazing abilities to get pucks through traffic. He's very good at. He'll put a puck through 3 or 4 guys' legs without any problem. He still sets up guys, and he's still such an icon in the dressing room, locker room for these guys. That's hard to imagine. It's amazing. It is. He's an incredible. He's on his 10th life in the NHL, and it just keeps getting better. And keep thinking, this is the year. Okay, this is the year he's going to fall apart. This is the year he's going to fall apart. Well, he gets better, and he's reinvented himself, which is an amazing thing. and he's old enough that makes me not feel super old, and I like that about him. I ran into a Devils fan yesterday who said, "Yeah, thank God the Devils' leading scorer is still older than me." You know.
Yeah. Well, let me say this about Yager too. It was interesting because I just received a copy of the minutes from the last Writers Association meeting, and that's, as many people know, that's where I ended my reign as president of the Professional Hockey Association. But in the minutes, it listed that I had made a personal plea, which is true, for writers to look at the Masterton Award differently. Some of the voters, I think, look at it almost as a comeback player of the year. And, I didn't like it last year when, Chris Letang said, it's an award you don't really want to win because it meant you had gone through some sort of calamity in your life. And then the following year you come back and then you win the award. Well, that's not what it's supposed to be. And my point is that Jaromir Jagr should win this award. This award should be about perseverance and dedication to the game.
Totally.
No one epitomizes that more than Jaromir Jagr. So I hope that the writers this year, look at Jaromir Jagr as a guy who is a leading candidate for this award. I mean, you look at the years he's logged in this game and the work ethic he's had to preserving his place among the premium players, even at an advanced age like that. I think to me, he symbolizes what the Masterton Award should be, and not necessarily a comeback player of the year.
I like that a lot. I do. I agree with that completely. Let's move on to the Islanders. The Islanders, okay, they were a little bit active this weekend. It was nice of them to make these trades during Yom Kippur service with my wife. It's not exactly a fun. That's not exactly the appropriate service to be texting people from.
Sorry,
just want to throw that out there. Anyway, so the Islanders are they picked up Yaro Halak, Mikhail Grabowski, Nikolai Kulemin. I can never say this guy's right. Nikolai Kulemin. They picked him up. They picked up Leddy. They picked up Boychuk over the weekend. They've lost all the players they lost for those guys, and they also lost because all my notes were before that trade. They also lost Nabokov, which was a big player for them, but the pickup of Halak more than fixes that situation. Although Nabokov did get pitch a shutout preseason a couple nights ago. So all right, so this team comes down to Halak, and I'll ask the panel this question that I asked. I'll start with you, Mike. The question I asked yesterday on my blog: are the Islanders now, after these two trades, a definite playoff team?
No, they're not a definite playoff team. I think now they're legitimately in that group of 7 through 11 who could make the playoffs. Their defense up until this weekend, when they get a Stanley Cup winner in Boychuk, a Stanley Cup winner in Nick Leddy, was below average and dependent on a lot of young kids like Calvin DeHaan and Griffin Reinhart. Now, at least they have some veteran guys to go along with Hamonic and Wisniewski. I think they'll get better goaltending out of Halak and Chad Johnson. They need Tavares to stay healthy, and their forwards, they're deep at forward. But until they improve their defense, I thought they were more in the Connor McDavid sweepstakes in spite of all the additions that they made, and they didn't want to be in that sweepstakes because they don't even have their first-round pick. So they mortgaged a little bit more of their future by trading 3 picks to get Johnny Boychuk. And now I think if they get good goaltending and if Tavares stays healthy, I think that they could snag one of the 2 wild card spots. I don't think they're going to be a top 3 team in the Metro, though.
What are your thoughts, Kev?
Oh, I don't think they're guaranteed to get into the playoffs because I think that's a wide open. But I like their chances, and I think they were greatly helped and aided by the acquisition of Nick Leddy and John Boychuk. I mean, Boychuk is a real strong defensive player with a really underrated shot. He's got a quick release and a pretty booming shot. And Leddy obviously is an offensive defenseman. But let's also not forget that Leddy had trouble getting playing time on the Chicago Blackhawks defense. He was a low minutes guy. Now, that's a really talented defense. And obviously he'll play more minutes with the Islanders. But they really upgraded their defense with those 2 moves. I think it was worth the price they paid, which was steep. But I didn't think they gave up a lot to get Leddy, but the Boychuk was a lot in my opinion. I think they're going to be a top 10 offensive team. Maybe somewhere around 9th, 10th, 8th in terms of scoring ability. they'll rank him on the top 10 scoring teams. Tavares, projected to be like 95-point guy if he wouldn't have been hurt last season.
Yeah.
I think he'll be there again. I think he'll be right there behind Sidney Crosby. I think Okposo has improved. One of the most underrated players in the league is still Nielsen. This is a guy that can kill penalties.
Yeah.
We thought of him as a role player. Now he's a goal scorer. They have a lot of depth now. They have a lot of depth up front. Ryan Strome, I think, is going to be a terrific player over time. There's a lot to like about the Islanders, and through all of they've looked like patchwork every year for the last 3 years. It's like your grandmother's quilt is their team, but now they look like a very cohesive team, and I think Griffin Reinhardt's a good young player. I think he's more mature than a normal player his age. So, I wouldn't guarantee they're going to make the playoffs, but I wouldn't be shocked if they're in either third or fourth in that division.
Yeah, I think Alak also is a kind of goalie who is going to thrive in this kind of situation. He's going to get shots on him. I mean, they picked up forwards, they picked up defensive players, and they're pretty good defensively, but they still don't have like a shutdown defender in my mind. And I think they're going to give up shots. And Halak actually has shown he's way better when he plays on a team that gives up shots than he does in the other situation.
His save percentage in Washington last season was like .920.
Yeah.
Like if in his lifetime save percentage, it is so much better than what Nabokov had last season.
Yeah.
I mean, they really believe that he'll just make a higher percentage of saves, and that'll help their defense as well. So, I think this is if you're an Islanders fan and you're not living next to Nassau Coliseum and you're upset about going to Brooklyn next season, you're pretty happy about where the Islanders.
No, yeah, I think they're in a good spot. I agree. On to the New York Rangers. Okay, obviously we know this team finished second in the Metro Division, lost in the Stanley Cup Final last year. They added a lot of players. They added Dan Boyle, Matthew Lombardi, Lee Stepniak, and Tanner Glass. So a lot of older players, a little bit of age, a little bit of youth there. Their key losses: Anton Strawman, Brad Richards, Benoit Pouliot, and Brian Boyle. Three of the four of them were definitely factors in their playoff run last year. And I would say maybe all four of them were. The question is now, where are the Rangers? Are another one. I mean, this division is all full of question marks, as you said, Kev. It's really hard to predict this. Where the heck are they?
They're a 1 through 5 team for me. Because they have Lundqvist, they're a contender to win the division in my mind. But a team doesn't usually get to the Stanley Cup Final and then give up that many key players or lose that many players. So because of that, they're a little bit more difficult read. And now on top of that, Stepan, was injured, and so now they'll start the season without their number one center. As well. So, they overcame a tough start last season. So, maybe that won't be such of an issue. But, Brad Richards, say what you want about him, but he was a 20-goal scorer for this team last season, and now he's gone as well. And Boyle, I think, will really be missed in the playoffs. He's just a guy that's just built, all 6'7" of them to be in the playoffs. Like in a 7-game series, he's a real obstacle.
He's a real monster.
Yeah, he's just aggravating to play against because he's so big and he's a good face-off guy. There's a lot to like about him. And Strawman, I thought was as effective as anybody in their run. He was just very efficient getting the job done. So I think they're a very difficult read. Dan Boyle's going to be interesting to see how much gas he has left in the tank because, all they really need him to do is to be an offensive catalyst because they've got, in Girardi and Mark Stahl and then McDonough. Yeah, I mean they have 3 really strong defensive players. So this is the first time Boyle's ever been in a position where whatever he does defensively is almost a luxury because he's being brought in to be an offensive catalyst.
Good, Mike.
Heck, I think the Rangers and the Devils are in the same position where they're going to need their goaltenders to carry them if they have any realistic chance of making the playoffs. And I mean, I don't think that the Rangers have fallen out to the. I think they're in that 7-11 sort of range right now with the departures that they had last year. Plus, I mean, Stepan's going to probably be out a month, but they didn't really replace those guys, Boyle and Pouliot. Tanner Glass was not much in Pittsburgh. They sent Matthew Lombardi. They waived him today, so he's not. They did bring in Ryan Malone, and if Malone, I believe, they signed him to a contract, so he's going to make the team, and he played decently during the exhibition season. What I think is going to be interesting to watch with this team is you've got Zuccarello and you've got Mark Stahl, who are both unrestricted free agents at the end of this year, and if they out of it, will they trade Stahl? Will they trade Zuccarello? And if they can't afford them, or will they try to extend them?
They're gonna have to try to afford them. I mean, they can't lose those guys. They're not in a spot where they can't lose either one of them, in my mind. I mean, what they have now is a really good, solid top four and a great goalie, and that's gonna get them far.
Right.
In my mind, that's gonna be hard to beat. But offensively, Marty St. Louis at center is pointless. I mean, moving him to center, I think, is absolutely, you're losing what you get out of Marty St. Louis, and you're giving yourself a very small first line center for this division. You don't want a first line center of that size in this division at all. They wouldn't have traded. They should have tried harder to keep Boyle there, Brian Boyle, in my mind. And if they had known about Stepan, they probably would have. But they're sort of in that spot now where they're stuck. They're a tough one. They're a tough one. On to the Philadelphia Flyers, who finished third last year in the Metro Division, 42-30-10. We're the second best team in hockey from November on, which people forget how bad they started last year. Was horrendous. They had an horrendous start, and shouldn't have even been in the playoffs. But they made the playoffs. And sort of heard somebody talk about the other day that rule of thumb that if you're in the playoffs at American Thanksgiving, 99% of the time you're in the playoffs. And that's where you can look at those teams that make the playoffs by American Thanksgiving, and they're going to be in the playoffs. Well, the Flyers kind of broke that rule last year because they were not a playoff team at Thanksgiving, at the American Thanksgiving, but ended up almost 1 point from being in second place in this division. They fell 1 point behind the Rangers. Their key additions are Jay Umberger and Michael Del Zotto. Their losses, Scott Hartnell, Steve Downey, and Kimmo Timonen for the time being, which is a biggie. Although I do think Kimmo will find a way to get back, just because that's more based on my knowing him and seeing how determined he is than it is maybe the reality of it. It's got a long way to come. Kimmo does a long way to come. All down to goaltending in Philadelphia, I think. All down to Steve Mason. If Mason plays like he played last year, this team is a playoff team. If he doesn't play like they are last year, they're not a playoff team, and that's basically. I guess you could say that we've said that about the Devils and the Rangers, and maybe the Flyers aren't any different in that category. Claude Giroux, if he has a big season, which he should, because again he was one of the top scorers in the NHL after November of last year, and looks good so far in preseason. And the defense is good. And Del Zotto, we've seen a couple times in the preseason where we've seen Del Zotto and Luke Shen out there together. I don't think I would ever do that on a bet, but as a defensive pairing. But
you said it, I didn't.
No, that's been pretty scary. But I'll tell you, one player I've really noticed that looks phenomenal is Jacob Voracek. And if you haven't picked your fantasy pools yet, and the Hockey Buzz fantasy pool, by the way, you got to get in today or tomorrow. Jacob Voracek's going to have a major year. He's flying around. He's in great shape. He looks really strong, and he's one of those guys who can do that. Also, Vinny Lecavalier has looked a lot better than he's ever looked in a Flyer uniform in this preseason. For what it's worth, I mean, there's a lot of talk about moving him out and stuff like that. He has definitely shown up with something to prove and a little bit of chip on his shoulder. He's not, and I think he's in that stage where he needs to do what Jágr did and redefine himself, and he's trying to do that. The Flyers have tried to move him, of course, and would still like to move him. But if he's here and he redefines himself, he could be okay. He's not a terrible player. He still has skill. He's still very good on the power play. He's just not Vinny Lecavalier, So he's got to figure out how to do this, how to make that work. I've been some interesting decisions on keeping up Moran, the young defenseman, and moving Gossipier down to the AHL. I know they couldn't put Moran in the AHL because of the whole juniors thing, but for the time being, Moran being up is he's a very big defenseman who can only play the right side for some reason. Putting him on the left side has been disastrous whenever they've tried. But he's got like a Chris Pronger look to him. But somebody in the press box the other night really described this well, and they said that Moran looks like he's the kind of player who's supposed to hit people. Like he thinks like, I'm this big, I need to hit people. But he doesn't hit people like, Pronger hit people, where Pronger, it was in his blood to hit people. Moran does hit, but it doesn't necessarily feel like, he's actually a pretty skilled player. He moves the puck really well, but he's big. He's huge. I'm not totally surprised that he's here, but, they've got some things. Gossevere is one of those guys who is going to be a star in the NHL. He's going to be a perfect chemo team and replacement, and probably at some time this year will be up from the minors for the Flyers. They're trying to take him patiently in the AHL, but it's going to be hard because he's a big part. Made their power play look way better in the preseason whenever he was out there. But they're taking the time, and Hextall has a little bit of a honeymoon here with the Snyder family, apparently, to actually take their time on some players like Scott Lofton, who they sent down to the minors. There's another guy. So Lawton also really looked good on the power play. He looked very strong. So they're giving some of these guys some AHL time, which is something that the Flyers haven't done over the last few years. So Kevin, any thoughts on the Flyers?
Well, I mean, I think they're just part of this mix. The key for the Flyers is to cut down on the goals against, which I think it was pretty clear that they were a different defensive team under Berube than they were earlier in the season. And now that they've had a full season with him, I expect just by working with Berube and utilizing his system, I think that number will be down. But when you look at their goals against, there were no other playoff team that gave up more goals than the Flyers did last season. And I thought Mason played well. So, I mean, I think that kind of shows what kind of hole they dug themselves early in the season. They had just given up too many goals. But, I think their defense is interesting. It's intriguing. But I don't think we know where that defense is yet. I like their offense. LeCavier could end up being the best trade they didn't make if he's any kind of offensive force this season. And they still have younger players with big upsides. Couturier obviously is a guy we don't know where he's where his offensive game will end up as well. And I'll be interested to see what Braden Shen does as well. So I think they're right in that mix, and wherever they ended up wouldn't shock me. If they missed the playoffs, I wouldn't be stunned, and if they contended to win the division, I wouldn't be shocked.
Yeah, I think that's very accurate. Braden Shen has been playing on the wing with Giroux and Voracek a lot, and I'm not too keen on that move. I think that Braden Shen needs to be a center. This is part of the whole LeCavier slotting people in thing. The part of moving LeCavier, I think, was to give Braden Shen that second center spot. But for now, they're going to keep him there. Mike?
I think the Flyers are one of the top 3 teams in their division. I think they'll make the playoffs. I mean, my only concern, as Kevin said, was their goals against and their defensive play. I mean, their defense is sort of a hodgepodge. I think Mark Streit is a good power play defenseman back to his Montreal days and days with the Islanders. I just don't know if a team if a team can be successful defensively playing Mark Streit 25 minutes a night. Andrew McDonald is a similar type of player. He eats up a lot of minutes, but I don't know if you want him out there for that many minutes. Colburn and Shen and Grossman, they have depth, but I don't know if they have the quality on the blue line, and maybe that's why they're going to bring up Moran and play him and see if he fits into the NHL and maybe can provide them a little stability as a young player. But I'm not sure. Let's just say this team still misses Chris Pronger. They'll always miss Chris Pronger, and they have not found a Chris Pronger replacement. But there aren't many Chris Prongers out there, so
you can't find a Chris Pronger replacement. And I think the best thing the Flyers might have this season is that they realize that for the first time. I think they've been trying to replace him, and they realize, they're going to be, my favorite term, defense by committee a little bit, but they are going to have that. And and I think that's going to be okay for them. But we'll see. It really comes down to me. To the best players being the best players for them. It's Giroux, it's Mason. It's what it comes down to. If they both have good years, then the Flyers are a definite playoff team and probably a top 2 team in this division. If Mason gets hurt or Giroux gets hurt, then they've got issues. They don't have players of that level, but no one does. So it's not that different than other teams. Then to continue our division of question marks, we go into the Pittsburgh Penguins. Who, holy moly, we got the Penguins and the Caps still to do, and we talk about question marks. All right, so the Penguins' key additions are Christian Ehrhoff, Patrick Hornqvist, Steve Downey, Nick Spaulding, and Blake Como. And their losses, they lost 3 of the 6 defensemen they went into the playoffs last year in Niskanen, Orpik, and Engelin. They lost James Neal, they lost Jussi Jokinen, and they lost Stepniak and Tanner Glass and Joe Vitale. So they really they've lost a lot of players, and they added a lot of players. They lost a coach, they lost a general manager. They have a superstar who's just starting to skate in Malkin. They've got Crosby, who's carrying the load and who's going to have to carry the load big time. They've got a goalie who's on his final year of his contract, who really, when you think about it, no matter what happens, Marc-Andre Fleury is not going to be back. If he has a great year and does really well, then he's a free agent at the end of the year and he's going to sign somewhere else. And if he has a terrible year, he's not going back. So there's really no this is Marc-Andre Fleury's last year in Pittsburgh in all likelihood. The Penguins. Let's start with you, Mike. Penguins.
Sidney Crosby has broad shoulders to carry most NHL teams. I don't know if his shoulders are broad enough to carry this team if Malkin is out for any significant period of time. I mean, I think they're weaker than they were last year. Fleury had a good year last year, and he needs to step up, especially if he wants to gain employment with another team after this year, because I think he's going to, they're going to move on from him after this year. Letang is still a question mark. They made a good fill-in signing with Ehrhoff after he was bought out from Buffalo. But the depth at forward and the fact that they're still using Kunitz and probably Dupuis when he's back healthy again as Crosby's line mates, there's just not enough there, and they're wholly dependent on Crosby and Malkin carrying them. And if they can't, this team isn't a playoff team. I think they will make the playoffs because Crosby is the best player in this league. But God forbid if he gets hurt and he's out 20 games, they might miss the playoffs.
Kevin?
Yeah, I mean, I think the demise of the Penguins has been greatly exaggerated, but I agree with Mike in terms of that they're not as strong as they were last season. But there's still some potential there. Anytime you've got Crosby and Malkin and Chris Letang and Kunitz, I mean, that's a pretty good start of a team. And some of these guys are going to contribute. I like the Hornqvist a lot. I think he'll be a much higher profile player in Pittsburgh. He's got one of those guys that'll score tough goals. He'll be in front of the net. He'll take abuse. I don't think they'll necessarily. I think Malkin will miss Neal because he liked the way Neal played and they worked well together. But I think in terms of what Hornqvist can do for the team, they'll be fine in that regard as well. I think they're a playoff team. They're certainly not a lock to win the division. Fleury was actually okay last season,
He was
and
good.
I agree with both you and Mike. This is his last season for as well. I like the Ehrhoff signing a lot. He's motivated to be there. He handpicked that team. Like, he could have gone numerous places, and he said, "I want to play for the Penguins," because he likes the way they play. And I think he'll fit, really, really well there. So, they're going to make the playoffs because they have Crosby and Malkin. We don't know when Malkin's coming back, but all indications this is not a serious injury. That it just needs time. So let's, once they get into the playoffs, who knows? I mean, their team is at least built a little more toward the idea of competing in the playoffs than it was last season. So in that regard, maybe they're even a little better.
Yeah, and Ehrhoff was bought out not because he was, declining in Buffalo. It was because he had 7 years left on that contract, and that was, that was the last chance for them to use the compliance buyout. So getting him at $4 million, I mean, he replaces, I think, adequately a guy like Niskanen who goes on the big free agent deal to Washington. And they do have some young guys like Mata who had a really good year last year. But it's all going to be on Crosby and Malkin, and after a while, you sort of have to develop a supporting cast, and that supporting cast, to my mind, has some cracks in it. So
Well, this is the thing, right? And Brooks Orpik, who is not, what we all think was a little bit maybe overpaid, but long term, but not short term. I think he'll be a big pickup for Washington short term. Is also like there were times last year when I remember people saying, around that Crosby was really upset about the fact that Orpik would be gone. I mean, Orpik was a big factor, and I can't imagine playing. You know what I'm saying? I can't imagine playing on a team without Orpik. So there's, Orpik is a big focal point of this room to be gone. That's one of the things that's going to be fascinating to see, to me, how that plays out. Ehrhoff more than fills in for Niskanen in my mind. Probably a better player, but Orpik, yeah, I think this is Crosby's team now. I mean, it's always been his team, but as far as leadership goes, I think it even comes more onto Crosby now. And they should be a playoff team. I mean, remember they were so far ahead of everybody last year, early on in the season, that they didn't really have anything to play for much of the year, and I think that also affected them in the playoffs. I think that they didn't, they started lapping people. They were so good in the beginning of last year, so it's really tricky. Washington, finally, our final team of this is, their key additions are that before spoken of Matt Niskanen and Brooks Orpik, and Justin Peters is a goalie. They lost Grabowski, they lost Halak, they lost Dustin Penner. Still hasn't signed anywhere last I saw. And they got Barry Trotz, and that's a big addition for them, a huge addition for them. It brings something that the Capitals haven't had since Ron
Wilson?
a coach that just leads them for a very long time, that could lead them for a very long time, right? The questions are obvious. They're always the same. Will Ovechkin play in Trotz's style? Is Trotz too defensive oriented? Kev, your thoughts on how this is all playing out in Washington?
I think it's really going to work well there. First of all, Barry Trotz is not going to try to convert Ovechkin to his defensive religion. He recognizes, Alex Ovechkin, for all the criticism, has scored 50 or more goals in 5 of his 9 seasons. Yeah. And he's been a plus player in 2/3 of his seasons. I know he had a big minus last season. You're not going to try to turn him into a mucker and grinder. You're not going to have him blocking shots. I think what Trotz is going to do, in fact, I know this is what he's going to do, he's just going to ask him to try to be a little more responsible defensively when he comes back, a little more aggressive on the back check. So Ovechkin is still going to be Ovechkin, which is a very good thing. But the rest of the guys are going to toe the line, and what we're going to see with any Trotz team is always highly competitive. It always looks like they got too many men on the ice because of their defense. They just seem to be everywhere at the same time. And I think that's what you're going to see. How long has it been since the Capitals played strong defensively? I mean, it's got to be 20 years.
Yeah.
So, anyway, not since the days of Langway.
Right.
I just think that this team will be better suited to make the playoffs than they've been in the past. And, their offense is still pretty good. I mean, Backstrom is still a good player. It's going to be interesting to see where Kuznetsov is. It's almost like a referendum in my mind, Kuznetsov, on the KHL. Because he was a dominant KHL player. So if he comes over and he struggles this season, then maybe that KHL isn't as strong as they have led us to believe that it is. So
I like that. That's a good point. I watched him in I think the rookie game or something like that, or one of the preseason games, and he was pretty dominant. But it's hard to tell, if he's going to be that way, because who he's playing against,
Yeah. So I mean, I guess again they fit real nicely into this very mysterious division where I think their sliding scale is anywhere from being 4th in the division, 4th or 5th in the division, to being up near 2nd or 3rd. I don't know whether they can climb all the way to the top, but the key, and it seems like we're saying this with every team, but it's Holtby.
Yeah.
I mean, where's he at? Because exactly. I took some grief. Some fans really defended him last season with me when I wrote that. I thought he got a free pass too. Like, I don't think he was a great every night either. I mean, that defense needed work, but I thought he could have played better than he did last season.
Well, Holtby played his best when, Dale Hunter was their coach for that little time period, and they had some success in the playoffs, beating the Bruins. I think it was 2012. They were playing more defensive style, and I know that he tried to keep Ovechkin in check, and I don't think that that's what, as you said, Kevin, what Trotz is going to do. But I think the rest of that lineup can play that kind of style. But Holtby, with them playing more, solid defensively, was very good for them. And if Trotz can instill what he wants to do, I think Holtby can have a bounce back year. Their defense is really deep. I mean, when you have Carl Alsner as your number 5 defenseman, that's a luxury. I mean, there's not many teams that have a defenseman of the quality of Alsner on their third pairing.
Yeah.
They just need to get more offense from other people other than Ovechkin and Backstrom, because Kuznetsov could sort of take that Alex Semin role and maybe score 20 to 25 goals and give a secondary offensive option. Then I think that they're a playoff team.
I think I kind of agree. I want to see this team. I want to see what Trotz does to them, and I want to see a more consistently level-headed Capitals team, because there have been games they've come into Philly, at least, when I've seen them live, where they just didn't even show up. And then there were games when they came in that they looked really strong. And it was over the last several years, that's been the Capitals to me. Like, when you watch them sometimes, you would swear this is the worst team in hockey. Like, you've seen them live. I've seen them put in efforts that were so minimal, that it felt like a preseason game, in the regular season. And then then you watch them on TV and you see the record, and they're like, okay, well, wait, they're beating some good teams, but in Philly they haven't been doing that. So it was weird. It was very strange to watch. They're just a really hard team to understand, and I think, though, if nothing else, Trotz has a good sense of consistency. Like you said, Kevin, they're going to work hard. They're going to be a lot more like Columbus that way. They're going to battle you. And Ovechkin, for all of again, I'm an Ovechkin fan, and I think that. Though he shows signs of laziness, maybe sure, but he's playing a lot of ice time and he's pulling a lot of numbers, and more often than not, he's not lazy on the ice, and more often than not, he's racing back for pucks too, and he's not terrible defensively when he wants to be good defensively. I've seen him race back as well. So, yeah, I mean, he's a top 5 player in the league. Let's see if he gets back there. This will be to see whether he can get back to 50 goals or not. Which a lot of people seem to think there's going to be. That's another discussion for another day. But a lot more 50 goal scorers this year than we've had in the past couple of years. We'll maybe talk about that on Wednesday as part of our thing. So, Josh, what do we have in news before we get out of here today?
Yes, a little bit of news, not a whole lot, but the Tampa Bay Lightning today, Jonathan Drouin saying he's been cleared for more action, feeling encouraged when he plays, still up to the coaches. Word is, though, that he will not be ready opening night. Buffalo Sabres today cutting Mikhail Grigorenko. He's been sent
surprising.
down.
Yeah. Mike, you have something for that?
Well, yeah, Garth, our Sabres columnist, is saying that the Sabres are going to keep Sam Reinhart. They're going to probably play him up to the 9-game limit, but probably not go into his entry-level deal. And then once they send him back to Kootenay in the Western Hockey League, that Grigorenko would probably be called up. He's got the option, and he played in the AHL last year, so I think it's a temporary demotion.
Okay, Josh?
Daniel Alfredsson, still not sure whether or not he is going to return. His future remains up in the air. Who knows when he's going to decide if he's playing, but I hope he knows that the season starts in a couple days.
Looking for his future. I don't see it yet.
Yeah. Also, we have the Florida Panthers naming Willie Mitchell their new captain.
That's something. Yeah, that's a guy they just brought in. You don't see that very often. Naming a captain who just came to the team a few months ago. But this is a team that has so many changing parts. I guess you can do that.
And he's on a short-term deal. Like I thought that Boland was going to end up being the captain. Which, if they're naming Willie Mitchell and he's signed for I think 2 years, that means that eventually they're going to want to make probably either Barkov or Huberdeau or one of the young guys a captain in a few years.
Have you heard, Kevin, that Ekblad is captain material? Because I've heard that. I've heard people say that.
Yeah, and I like this. This really does sort of. It seems like it's a short-term, bridge captain role, and he's perfect because of the way he plays.
Yeah.
For a team, especially one that's sort of been thrown together, the way the Panthers have. I mean, it's an odd collection of players that we have there, and they don't really have too many strong allegiances anyway, because I think you had a great line yesterday about these Panthers teams, if they pass each other in the mall, would not recognize each other. And I think Willie Mitchell is a good captain for a team like this.
Well, he just won a Stanley Cup, too. I mean, it's hard to remember that. He did just win a Stanley Cup.
Got the ring. Yeah,
Yeah, he's got the ring, and that matters. People will listen to him. He'll come in there and he'll be like, okay, last time I played, I was lifting a Stanley Cup over my head, so let's go out and do this, and that's something. Josh?
Yes, I also have the video which I want to show you guys of Jeff Skinner getting hit in the head, and you know what? I would not be surprised if this gets reviewed. So here's it's a slow-mo, but if you look carefully, it'll keep going.
Is it a replay of that? Because we couldn't tell much on it at all.
Here it comes.
Forearm.
He's back there, yeah.
Wow. Yeah, forearm shiver right to the head.
I don't know. Skinner was
surprised at all
if that took that hit, though, wasn't he? It's sort of Skinner's. I think that looks like Niskanen was not trying to hurt him. I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, see, this is the problem, Mac. When you have players who are, I mean, this isn't in this instance, but you have players who are really tall. You have players hitting players who are really short.
Right.
And when there's a collision like that, it looks like the shorter player is just been plowed by the guy, but it's because of the height differential that sometimes things like this happen. Now this one, it looks like a forearm shiver, and I think he'll probably end up getting at least a game or two, depending. And we know that it always in the NHL, when there is a concussion, that springs up the suspension, not the act, but the end result.
It's a defenseless act, though. I mean, he was defenseless there, so.
Yeah, he was defenseless, but he was spinning too. That happened really fast. In slow motion, it was worse than it did in fast speed. You couldn't even tell where Niskanen was. Yeah. So we'll see. I mean, I'm gonna if we're gonna lay down wagering right now on suspensions, I'm saying nothing. Nothing comes of this.
I'll
Kev,
say
what do you think?
No suspension.
No suspension.
You don't think Quintel's gonna try to make his stamp known at all?
Not on this one, and not in the beginning of the season. There's no reason to right now.
Remember that was Wisniewski suspension? You don't think it's going to be another one of those? Because they didn't even have video for that one.
Yeah, but that one was worse. That was worse. I felt like it was worse. I mean, this is hard to tell. This is really fast, and Niskanen doesn't have a history of this either. So he has a little bit more of history than Matt Niskanen has, to say the least. So that also.
I think inconclusive video essentially. So.
Yeah, right. I'm with you there. All right, let's get out of here, guys. Great fun today. Thanks for joining us, guys. We'll be back again tomorrow, where we will review the final division, which is the Central Division. Maybe another tough one. And we'll be back again on Wednesday to give you our predictions on the playoffs and all the crazy things we think could possibly happen before the season kicks off on Wednesday night. We're only 72 hours away from hockey, thank heavens. And another quick little note, before the show today, Kevin, Eric Johashik, and I recorded a beta of a show that's going to be called The Cranky Hockey Writers. It was a lot of fun. So we're going to be doing that, starting that next week. It's going to be a once-a-week show, news show, and look forward to it. I really think you're going to love it. I don't know if we're going to put the beta out or not, but it was just a trial. We wanted to see how we could see how it all flowed. But it was
just
good.
To correct you, 53 hours until the puck drop.
53 hours till the puck drops. Excellent. I'll be here and I'll be ready. All right, guys. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. Talk to you soon.